Hi folks, Joseph Kursky here with you again to talk about Part 3, Career Pathways in Geotechnologies. Now, why do I look like I'm half asleep here at 31 North, 87 West? Well, I want to encourage you to stick with me here. Don't multitask here. What I hope to do here in these videos, the series of videos, is talk about your own career pathway. How do you get into geographic technologies? How do you keep current in geographic technologies? Some of the things you need to be thinking about. Now, I've just talked about in Session 2 about some of the key trends, 3D, building interior spaces, etc. in geotechnologies. Now I'd like to talk about what I believe are 5 critical skills for career success with geotechnologies, and the first one is curiosity. Being inquisitive about our world is fundamental. In fact, I think it is the most fundamental thing to having success in geotechnologies as a career. Examining spatial relationships, considering scale, be tenacious, solve those problems. I mean, how many of you have been up late at night saying, I've got to solve this thing in my ArcGIS or in my way of thinking about a problem? So be tenacious, grapple with that problem, consult with others if you need to, but be tenacious and get a handle on that particular problem you're trying to solve. And it all comes, I think, from being inquisitive. So how do I learn this piece of software or this tool that I'm not familiar with? I'm going to be tenacious and find out. How do I grapple with problems? I need to first ask questions about what kinds of problems are in our world and what scale they operate and what other problems interact with them and affect them. So asking geographic questions is important here. The geographic inquiry process I'd like to bring up because I do believe it's important to our discussion here today, and that is fundamentally asking a geographic question. So starting there, what is the relationship between land use, climate, elevation, and landforms? Okay, and soils, let's say. So bringing in a couple of variables. What is the relationship between birth rates and life expectancy? What is the relationship between energy and electricity use and literacy? All kinds of interesting questions we can ask and answer. And then you've got to acquire some data, some resources, some tools, some apps, some technology to let you, and some field methods to let you grapple with and get at the heart of that question. Then you're going to explore that geographic data that you've acquired. You're going to analyze it in various ways, for example, using a geographic information system or remote sensing technologies, and then you're going to act on it. You're not just going to write a bunch of reports and communicate your results. You're going to act on it. It's going to change maybe your behavior about an issue. It's going to help you, okay, well, if that's happening on the planet, should it be happening on the planet? And can I do anything personally or with a group of people to get involved in that issue, to maybe change the way my community feels about urban greenways, for example? And then it hopefully repeats, right? You're asking additional questions as you've done your research and acquired these data sources. I'd also like to bring up an important concept that I think is fundamental to what we're talking about, is that looking at the world geographically, we're looking at context and content. So we're looking at context, seeing the whole, patterns, linkages, trends, and so on, but also content. We're looking at specific things like watersheds, communities, neighborhoods, ecosystems, okay? We're looking at place. Place matters. Our sense of place matters. It's not just looking at a bunch of points, lines, polygons, and grid data. It's actually tied to our experience on the planet. It has to do with how we feel about the planet, how we interpret the planet. You know, von Humboldt 200 years ago was talking about that very thing, that it's not just classifying information that we find, flora, fauna, etc. It's how are things changing? How do humans influence the environment? How can the environment influence humans? How can we coexist with the environment in a sustainable way? And how do our own perceptions shape the way we interact with our world? Also, I think the second skill is ability to work with data. Now, I don't need to tell you that we're in the big data world. It's not like a future trend, it's here right now. Big data is key. How do we work with it? How do we assess whether data quality is there or not there? Are you, critical consumer that you are of data, you love it when you can get metadata from others, but are you populating metadata when you're producing data up into the cloud? Interesting. Think about that. You'd love to have metadata when you consume data, but when you're producing data, do you just sort of slough it off and say, well, I don't have time for it right now? No, you need to be practicing what you're preaching. You need to be populating your metadata, so if other people are using it, you need to tell them where you got it. what your sources are, what date did you create the data at, what scale did you use, what are some limitations on the data, and so on. Okay? So also important here is developing your critical thinking skills. Being critical of data, maps, methods. Maps and data are very useful in the geographic context, but it's useful, but it's also, you need to think about the limitations. And then how do you grapple with those limitations? How to find data, how to assess it, how to manage it. Don't make life difficult for yourself. These geographic issues and problems are complex enough. Don't make life more difficult by you being unorganized about your data. Practice good data management. Also crowdsourcing. How are you going to deal with data when it's not from an authoritative source, let's say, but it's from a crowdsourcing effort, like BioBlitz? How do you assess it? It may be very good data. Look at OpenStreetMap. Very good data. Crowdsourced. Look at Wikipedia. Good data. Crowdsourced. How do you set up a project so that it's vetted, so that you're passing it by some experts, some subject matter experts in the field? So crowdsourcing. Here's an example of a crowdsourced data set in ArcGIS Online. We had about 90 or so educators out collecting data on landmarks, trees, buildings, plants, traffic, pedestrian counts, and so on. So in about 90 minutes, they had gathered this data. How do I know if it's any good, right? I can click on different points and find out what the attributes are, but what were the standards used to generate that data, okay? So gathering and mapping data and analyzing crowdsourced results is increasingly common, but you need to be critical of the data and be able to assess it. Also being able to create story maps. You can create a story map, for example, multimedia map with a smartphone, right? You can have your smartphone out in the field and collect data on it. Well, okay, what standards are you using? What attributes are you creating or generating? So here's an example of a map that I created on a phone of the University of Denver. Go Pioneers! I teach there. I teach Geographic Information Systems there in the University College program. I also taught a course last fall called Why Maps Matter. Ooh, for the general public. Why this stuff actually matters, why they should care about it. So this is a map that I made with my ordinary smartphone, and that's easily done these days. Here's another map that is a crowdsourced story map from Esri Canada. Why I love GIS. Dots on maps, sure. Simple, not much analysis, but it gets people thinking geographically, spatially. And so maps like this serve a very key role in getting that general public geo-aware, which is what I talked about in the first segment of this multi-part series. So here we've got this web map that I was talking about earlier, about going out into the field, collecting data, and then mapping it and analyzing. Let's pop up a legend here, shall we, to look at the data that was collected. So this is a live web map that we're going to be exploring. How did we get there? Well, this particular map was created with the Collector for ArcGIS app that people had on their smartphones. And as you can see, now that we've got it in our Geographic Information System in our ArcGIS Online format, we can go ahead and analyze data. We can even pop up a photograph of the trees in that particular area. So we've got interactivity, we've got a lot of richness that we've collected in a very short amount of time, a very short amount of space. Excellent. So this is the kind of thing that you can do. Just think of the implications of crowdsourced mapped data. Wow, it just blows the mind, because government agencies, private industry, they don't have the funds to send multiple legions of field crews out there. What does that mean for you and I? That means we can have ordinary folks go out there on the landscape and collect some of this key data in a rigorous way. Interesting. Also, the third skill that I believe is important is understanding geographic foundations. Map projections matter still. Datums matter. Topology, spatial relationships, data models, database theory, classification, spatial stats, the geoprocessing methods that you're using, overlay versus buffer versus merge versus union, etc. Cartography, yeah, that still matters. Anybody can make a map nowadays, but is it communicating the results that are accurate, that are timely, that can be understood by whatever audience is looking at it? And also, what field methods are you using? Are they rigorous? Are they gathering the data that you need? So I'm going to cut it off there with this particular segment of the video series on pathways to geotechnologies. Join me for the next segment. Thanks. Bye.